Welcome everybody. Our webinar will start at 5:30. All right, I think it's time. I want to welcome everybody to another one of our Go Elite webinar. Today, we are very excited to welcome attorney Marta Meng. She is very experienced and is very renowned among the Chinese population. She is a immigration lawyer. She is also the founder and managing attorney at Meng PC. And today we're going to talk about, the USCIS new H1B rule. We all know that it has been slightly reformed and policy has been changed. We're going to break down the final rule a little bit of some certain rules. And also, we're going to take a look at the fiscal year 2025. What are the upcoming lottery looking like? And at the other half of our webinar, we're also going to have a live Q&A section. So please feel free to shoot your questions in a Q&A session so Attorney Meng can answer your questions. So before we begin, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about our company, what we do. We are located in Los Angeles. Go Elite is a professional consulting agency. We're dedicated to help international students thrive in the US. Our main services is Day One CPT University applications. We also do F1 reinstatement and emergency transfer, as well as change of status application as well. Our mission is just to make students' American dreams come true, and we are certified by AIRC as one of the first AIRC certified agency in the whole US. We are also on Google reviews. We currently have more than 280 Google reviews, so feel free to check us out on Google reviews. And this is our social media and contact information. So if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And without further ado, I will let Attorney Meng introduce herself.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. And thanks to Go Elite for having me here. Thank you everyone for attending today's workshop. So first of all, I want to do a very quick poll among our audience today. If you are participating the H1B lottery for the first time this year, can you type 1 in the Q&A section? If you have been in the lottery before, can you type 2? Just so that we know how many of you might be participating for the very first time. All right. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. Looks like a lot of you have already been through this process at least once. Yeah, so we know H1B usually has like an annual cap, which means not everybody who wants it can get it. So in order to decide whose petition to adjudicate, USCIS would run this random lottery every year since 2020 in March. Okay, there has been a big change in the way that lottery is going to be run this year. So that's something we're going to cover in today's workshop. So first of all, just a little bit disclaimer. about today's workshop. So for the material here, I believe Go Elite will distribute on their YouTube channel after today's workshop with some video clips. So you're free to take any notes, but please don't record it and distribute it publicly without any written consent. And second is anything, like everything here, is shared for general information. It is not intended as any legal advice. Even I answer your questions in the Q&A, that will be still considered general information because I don't know your case-specific situation. So just to let you know. All right. Okay, this is just a little bit about myself. As Ryan mentioned, I am an immigration attorney. I am a certified legal specialist in immigration law by the California Bar. I have been practicing over 10 years now, like about 12 years. I have been handling employment based cases, pretty much all type of work visas or other employment-based immigration petitions on a day-to-day basis. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But today, as the topic is about CAP H1B and mostly about the lottery system, so I hope we can have more the workshop topic related questions in the Q&A. But if we have time, I would be more than happy to answer other questions. Anything about other work visas or maybe about F1 student status in the Q&A session. So we will have about 30 minutes to answer your questions. You can leave your questions in the Q&A box. Right. All right, so this is what we're going to cover in today's workshop. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent H1B policy changes. You might have already heard a lot from the news, so I'm sure those of you who come out to attend today's workshop probably have been following these news very closely lately. So we're going to just cover them more in more detail, what to expect and what changes are going to take effect from when. All right. And also an overview about the timeline. Actually, USCIS has already released the registration window for this year's H1B lottery. So this is very important for those of you who are going to participating in this year's CAP H1B registration. Like, what is the deadline? I hope you don't wait until the deadline to do it, because every year we got questions from students, what is the deadline? This is not like the final exam, okay? Don't wait until the last day to submit your registration. Of course, this is not really up to you because this is done by the employer or the employer's council, but make sure at least you do your part well ahead of time so that you leave enough time for the others to do their part. And this is especially important for this year because there's going to be this big change in the online portal. No one knows what that change is like yet because USCIS won't release it until later this month. So in order to make sure the employer and their council have enough time to adapt to the new interface, it's best like you have your part ready. Okay. And then also like what are the other changes we can expect in 2024? Actually, if you followed those news, you might have noticed there were actually more proposed changes than what have been released so far. That's because the registration is coming up. It's more time sensitive. So USCIS decided to finalize the changes in the H1B registration first. And then they're going to work on the other public comments on the other proposed rule. So we expect USCIS to finalize those other parts later this year. And then if we still have some time, we might briefly talk about the alternatives to H1B, to stay and work in the US. All right, let's get started. Okay, these are the major changes so far. The most important one is the beneficiary-centric H1B registration process. You might have heard this a lot. What does that mean? That means each beneficiary will be counted only once in this lottery. For those of you who have participated in the H1B registration in the past, you might have heard stories where one person had multiple offers, right? They had offers from, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 companies or even more. And then they actually use that as a way to increase their chance in the lottery kind of unfairly. That won't be the case anymore in this year's lottery. No matter how many offers you have, USCIS will use the beneficiaries identifying information to count the beneficiary as opposed to the registration. So if you have 10 offers, then you're still going to be counted only once. And if you're selected, all 10 employers can petition for you. If you're not selected, then none of the employers can petition for you. So that's how the system works. By the way, we do notice that USCIS is starting to actually going after those who had multiple registrations in previous years. So for those who had multiple registrations, some of them had have got questioned at the consulate when they were applying for the H1B visa. Some of them were questioned by USCIS when one of those petitioners were filing the petition for them, getting those notice of intent to deny, things like that. So it's not like there was no consequence to what happened in the past. But at least right now, starting this year, USCIS decides to do it right and to use this new system to combat fraud and abuse of the system. So that's how it works. In order to do that, because USCIS would need some identifying information of the beneficiary, they decide to do what they decide to do is to use the valid passport or travel document as identifying information for the beneficiary. So that is something you can work on right now. If you don't have a valid passport, that's something you really need to get renewed right away, because that's the document you will need to enter yourself into the lottery pool. So that is the one big change in this year's lottery. The next is about the filing fees. The filing fees won't change until April the 1st, which actually means this year the registration fee will still be $10 as opposed to the new amount that is $215. So starting next year, the registration fee will actually be a lot higher. But this year, it's still going to be $10. And as to the filing fees, actually, USCIS, they released 3 new policies on the same day. One is the H1B registration window, one is the new H1B like registration rule, and the other is the filing fee. The filing fee will go up quite a lot for H1B as well. So the H1B base filing fee will go up from 460 to 780. Starting April the 1st, which means for this year's cap subject H1B cases, the new filing fee will apply. There will also be additional 600 for, it's called asylum program fee. So for each I-129, there would be this extra fee. There's a small employer discount. It's like half of the price, like 300, if the employer has 25 or fewer employees at the company. As you may have known, premium processing fee also will increase actually starting from February the 26th. So the cap subject H1B cases will also be subject to the premium processing fee, the new fee. That is $2,805. Current fee is $2,500. And for the premium processing time, currently it is 15 calendar days. Under the new rule, it's going to be 15 business days. So you kind of like pay more, but also get more time to get the decision under the new rule. Okay, so those are the major changes that's already being finalized, and that has already been announced by USCIS. Okay. All right. The next $1 million question every year is, what's the selection rate for this year? Actually, no one really knows. Before we like the registration window closes, because we don't really know how many registrants there will be, how many registration will enter into this pool. For this year, we don't know how many beneficiaries that will be, but we can probably get a sense of it from the data in the previous year. So this is the data released by USCIS for the previous year's registration. It started from fiscal year 2021. That was the first year when the online registration was launched. Okay, before that, the system worked very differently. So this is the first year. So the online registration system has been in place for 4 years so far. And we can tell from this chart, the registration number went up significantly from year 1 to year 4, right? In the first year, there were like, it's not a small number, but it was still kind of manageable for USCIS. That it was the 274,000 registrations. But last year, there were 780,000 registrations. That has really more than doubled the first year's registration. Was that because there were more demand for it, or more beneficiary? Not really. If we look at the column here, like a second to the next to the right, we can tell like half of those registrations were registrations for beneficiaries with multiple eligible registrations. Okay, so more than one company filed for the same beneficiary. That was one big reason that USCIS had to do something about it, because that number was a lot lower in year 1. That was only 28,000 in year 1. But then, in year 4, that has become more than half of the registrations. Okay, but the total cap hasn't been raised. So the regular cap is still 65,000. The master cap is 20,000. I mean, actually a little less than that, because there's some cap number saved for the H1B one. But because that number is very small, so let's just say altogether we have 85,000. That's the total annual cap for H1B. Okay, so if you do the math, all right, the total cap doesn't change, but the registration going into the pool increased significantly over the year. So the selection rate goes down year after year. All right. If this year with the new system, with the beneficiary-centric registration process, then how would that look like? Well, that really depends on first whether the number of registration will stay about the same. Let's just say maybe it's going to be about the same. Okay, let's just assume this year the total number of beneficiaries will remain the same as last year. So last year, we can tell from this chart that registrations for beneficiaries with no other eligible, pretty much like one company registering for one beneficiary, there were 350,000. Okay, that's still not a small number, right? And then as to the other pool where multiple companies were registering for the same beneficiary, from some news sources, the average company number for those beneficiary was like 4. So 4 companies, on average, in that pool, like 4 companies were registering for one beneficiary. So that means there were about 100,000 beneficiaries there. Okay, so if we add up the number, there were altogether about 450,000 beneficiaries last year. Okay, so depending on like how many registrations USCIS decides to select this year. Because with this new system, I'm sure USCIS would feel more confident that most of the selected registration will move forward with the petition. Okay, not as many of them will choose not to proceed with the following. Okay, so the total cap, annual cap remains at 85,000. Let's just assume USCIS is going to select a little bit more by factoring maybe some of them decide not to move forward with filing for whatever reason, and maybe a very small percentage will get denied eventually. Maybe USCIS will select about 100,000. Let's just say 100,000. So with that, it comes down to about like 22%. That's the selection rate. I mean, it's just a very rough estimate. I don't think it's going to be accurate, but just my personal estimate, given all these numbers, it's going to be somewhere between maybe, 20 to 25, or, if we're very optimistic, it shouldn't really go over 30%. So somewhere between 20 to 30%. So with this new system, we know there will be more fairness in the new lottery. But still, if we look at the numbers realistically, it's still not a very high chance. Even 30%, well, it's much better than last year, but still, it's not more than half. So a lot, like out of 10 people, 7 of them may still not get selected. 3 of them may. So for a lot of you entering into the lottery, especially if you're in your last year of the F1 status, it may be a good idea to also look into the alternatives. We're going to cover that at the end of the workshop. Okay. All right, here's the timeline. Okay. USCIS has already announced the registration window for this year. That is March the 6th to March the 22nd. Please note that is 12 p.m. Eastern time. So if you are on the West Coast, that is 9 a.m. So that last day really doesn't count. You really should have finished everything like March the 21st. That would be really your deadline. USCIS will announce the selected registrants by the end of March. Usually that's like a few days after the window is closed. So only the employer will get notified. So beneficiary won't. Okay, the attorney will also be able to check who's selected and who's not. Employers will also be able to check that and get email notification as well. And then for those selected cases, they can move forward with the petition filing. The filing window is from April the 1st to June the 30th. If your F1 status somehow, expire earlier than June the 30th, then you need to pay attention to your status in order to benefit from the so-called cap gap rule. The H1B petition should be filed before your F1 status expiration date. So if you have an expiration date earlier than June the 30th, please pay attention, work closely with your employer and the council to have the petition filed timely. And then USCIS will adjudicate the case. Well, as to the adjudication time, it really varies. Without premium processing, we have seen cases adjudicated fairly quickly, like about 1 or 2 weeks, without premium processing. But some can take months. Some of them can take like 3 or 4 months. That would happen to some cases as well. So it really varies from case to case. For a lot of students, especially if with the status expiring very soon, I know they might choose to add premium processing so that they get some certainty and you can get the decision sooner. Okay, and a lot of the students entering into the H1B process for the first time, or selected for the first time might be wondering how long it takes to prepare the H1B petition. There's this time that is required to prepare one petition, but if you are working for a really large company, you might also want to factor in, the volume of work at your HR department. So it's not like, the pure time working on one petition. It also depends on how, the work is coordinated within the organization and also with their council, immigration council. One good news this year is that online filing will be available. Again, we haven't seen that online account yet. USCIS will release that later this month. But that would really provide some assurance to a lot of the petitioners and the beneficiaries, because we won't run into the problem like missing a receipt anymore. Because with the online filing, we can get the receipt like number and notice from the online portal right away. So that gives us peace of mind that USCIS receive it. Because in previous years, with all these paper filing, there usually would be some logistic issues at some of the USCIS service center. You know, a lot of the cases arrived at the service center in the last week of the filing window, and the mailing rooms at those service centers were not able to process them timely, and there was big delay in issuing those receipt notice and leaving people really anxiously waiting for those notice to come. So with the online filing, that won't happen anymore. So I really hope we can see the online filing account very soon, and we probably will cover that in another workshop with Go Elite later, maybe this year. Okay, so first, before a petition can be filed, there's something called LCA, the labor condition application. That is something the employer should file with the Department of Labor. That takes a little bit of time. Okay, it takes about 7 business days. And then after that is certified and with both the employer and the employee documents ready, the employer can file the H1B petition with USCIS. As to the employee, really, there's not that much required from you. I know a lot of the beneficiaries, especially you get selected, you must be very excited. You don't want to do whatever you can, to facilitate this process. But what's required of you is not that much. I would say that can be that can break into 2 groups. One is about your qualification. Usually that's the degree, whether you have a qualifying degree. So if you have a US degree, then a degree and sometimes transcripts would be enough. If you have a foreign degree, then you will need to do a foreign degree evaluation from a US degree evaluation agency. So that is something probably the employer or the council will require from you. The other is about your underlying status. So if you are currently in F1 status, I would assume most of you are in F1 status, then you would need to prove that you have been maintaining your valid F1 status. You have been a full-time student pursuing full course of study, or if you are in your OPT, you need to show that you are doing the kind of job that is related to your major, and you have not accrued the unemployment time that is allowed by the regulation. So status documents plus the degree documents, those are pretty much all that's needed from the beneficiary. Okay, and then after that is filed with the USCIS, then you just wait for the USCIS to make a decision. I would say most of the things here are taken care by the employer, and also the fees, including the attorney's fee and the filing fees, those should be covered by the employer. The only fee that can be paid by the beneficiary is the premium processing fee. So if you want to get the decision sooner, because let's say your status is gonna expire very soon, you don't want that happen. You want to get a decision sooner, like within 15 business days, then you can choose to pay for that fee. But whether that is allowed or not is still a decision to be made by the employer, because the employer or their counsel are the ones who signs on the I-907 form. That's the premium processing request form. All right, so the good news is the H1B approval rate, like the petition approval rate. So after the case is selected, okay, that is very high since the Biden administration took office. Actually, toward the end of the Trump administration term, that has already gone up. Unlike in previous years, let's say here, if you look at the past data, in fiscal year 2019, 2018, the denial rate on H1B was really high. That's like over 20%. So that was very unfortunate because those cases had the luck to get selected in the first place, but then 2 out of 10 cases were denied for all kinds of reasons, but not anymore. I'll say the majority of the H1B cases get approved after selection. The number actually, the approval rate has been so far, I think it's like almost 98%. Okay, like only like about 2% cases got denied. But that really depends on the cases. After all, there are still 2% of cases get denied. So what are those cases? There are some very common reasons for H1B RFE and denial. So I would say these are really the most common ones. There could be other ones, but these are the most common ones. The first one is about specialty occupation. You might have heard this word from your friends if they have done H1B before. Specialty occupation, because H1B is for specialty occupation. That is for occupations that requires at least a bachelor degree in specific fields. All right. So that is about the requirement of the occupation. The other is about the SOC code. That is something we have seen in recent years. Sometimes USCIS would raise issue with whether the correct SOC code is selected. Especially there are some new types of jobs these days, like say a lot of like data related positions, like UX designer, right? USCIS has been adding new occupation codes into their own database. Well, technically, that's not USCIS, but the Department of Labor has been adding new occupation codes into their database. So when we are working on those petitions, we want to make sure the correct code is selected because the H1B wage is determined by the code and then the work location. So the correct code is very important. The third one is about employee qualification. Right. So for example, maybe the employer has very specific major requirement. Okay, this position requires a bachelor's degree in these majors. However, the employee is not from this kind of major. I know these days it is also very common, like people may go into certain occupations, like say a data scientist. That's something we have seen a lot these days. People coming from engineering background are going into the data kind of occupation or maybe software engineer. Then there's this question whether the employee has the qualifying degree to do that. That is something we need to kind of look at and be prepared if you're coming from a background that's not directly related to the job itself. Another one is about employer-employee relationship. That was more of an issue during the Trump administration, especially for those third-party placement, like for cases where the beneficiary is sent to a client site to work. That is when this issue most time can come up. But these days, not anymore because of some of the case laws and also the policy changes. Another one is about bona fide position, whether the position is a real position. That happens a lot in cases where the company is very small, and especially when there's some family relationships between, the employer and the employee, like say the husband, is the shareholder, wife is the beneficiary, that kind of scenario that may cause into the question whether this is a bona fide position or not. So those are more about the H1B petition itself. Another very common RFE issue is about the underlying status, whether you have been maintaining your status. That comes up a lot these years. USCIS seems to be really caring about like whether the students have been complying with the regulation governing F1 status. Okay, I know in the past there have been some occupations that are under more scrutiny by USCIS, such as market research analyst. Okay, but not anymore. There have been a lot of litigation in the past years, challenging a lot of the USCIS decisions. So these days, USCIS has already updated like some of, well, again, like DOL has already updated their system. A lot of the occupations, such as, like market research analysts, they're not like categorically like denied, because you might have heard some horror stories from those, applied for H1B in previous years. Those positions are no longer under more scrutiny than others. So don't worry if you are doing something like this, because I know a lot of you might be searching online, like searching on a lot of forums. And forums, you might want to look at the date. If that's a very old post, some of the rules there probably is no longer applicable to the current H1B adjudication. All right. So those are pretty much about the CAP season. Here are some more rules to expect later this year. One is about the CAP gap extension. It's a little unfortunate, like right now, this rule hasn't been finalized yet. I hope it will come out very soon. So the CAP gap currently is only until September the 30th, because under the previous rule, like probably the assumption is H1B would have been adjudicated by October the 1st and start from October the 1st. So the CAP gap, the student status, like extension is only needed until September the 30th. But with the online registration launched, the following window and the adjudication time will take longer. And for a lot of the cases, the adjudication may not be completed until much later than October the 1st. So USCIS proposed a change to the CAP gap extension until like April the 1st, the following year. So that would be a really good news to those students whose status is going to expire very soon. But we'll see what the final rule say on this issue. The other change is about to redefine the specialty occupation. Well, there's good and bad. We would have to see what the final rule says. The good thing is USCIS seems to want to codify some of the changes, for specialty occupation, they want to relax the interpretation of that a little bit for certain occupation. But for some degrees, let's say MBA, at least in the proposed rule, it seems that USCIS would also kind of scrutinize the MBA degree, which could be a little bit problematic. So like, this is like a mixed news. We will see what the final rule says and update everyone here. Another one is about CAP exempt H1B employer. You might know like certain nonprofits are CAP exempt organizations. They don't have to go through the lottery, but the current definition for a nonprofit to qualify as a CAP exempt employer is quite narrow. It seems that USCIS would like to relax that a little bit. So hopefully more nonprofit would qualify as CAP exempt H1B employer and would be able to bring H1B employees on board without having to go through the lottery. Another change is about where cases where the beneficiary owns a controlling interest. Currently, if the beneficiary owns, like say, more than 50% of shares in the company, USCIS would question whether there's like bona fide employer-employee relationship, because they consider the beneficiary already controlling the company, so they are not really an employee of the company anymore. That is really a problem for a lot of the startup companies, because a lot of the foreign nationals here, they want to start their own company. And there's really not many visa types available for them to really run their own business. So looks like USCIS is considering making a change to that. So in the future, even you own the majority like shares in the company, you might still petition H1B for yourself. So that is going to be a really big change if that final rule is released. Okay, the last one is probably the only bad news, is about the site visits. It seems like Department of Homeland Security wants to give itself more authority to conduct these site visits, and any refusal to comply will result in denial or revocation of the petition. Actually, we have seen DHS, conducting those site visits from time to time, especially with smaller companies. So if your H1B is approved, one day USCIS, like the DHS coming to your work site, it might be just a random site visit. It doesn't mean you have done anything wrong, but just expect that to happen if DHS kind of codifies their authority to do that. All right, that's pretty much it. I guess I will just skip to this alternatives and let's see what questions we have for today's workshop.
All right. Thank you so much, Attorney Meng. This is very thoughtful as well, very comprehensive knowledge. I think myself, I have learned a lot on H1B visa as well. And if you don't mind, I will start sharing my screen so everybody could jump in right into the Q&A session. All right. So I hope everybody could see this well. The first question would be, what is the purpose of beneficiary in H1B lottery registration? I guess maybe the definition of the beneficiary, what this is.
I assume the question is about why USCIS is making a change to the lottery process to make it
Yeah, it could
beneficiary
be.
centric.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we mentioned, this is to promote fairness in the system and to eliminate any potential fraud or misuse, like abuse of the system, because it would be very unfair if one beneficiary is like having like using multiple offers to increase the chance of getting selected. Actually, the law itself says, the quota, like the annual cap, the annual quota should be given out by like people, like by beneficiary, So, and it's
Mhm.
also causes waste, like say, for example, if one person has two offers, both get selected, in the USCIS system, that would be counted like twice. But really, that's just one person using the quota. So
Yes.
like another person could have got a quota, but somehow they lost the chance. So that's kind of like very unfair.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go to the next question. My passport is expired, and I don't know if I could get a passport in time when the registration closes. So what can this person do in that situation?
I would say at this point, we really can only advise you to get the passport renewed as soon as possible. Because this is a new system, I'm sure USCIS is also working on, this is a working process for USCIS as well. We don't know if the registration system would allow the entry of an expired date of a passport. If they allow it, maybe you can work with the council and see if you can still enter your passport information with an expired date, and if selected, maybe provide some documents to explain during the filing stage. But that's kind of getting really technical. We will have to see what the system allows us to do or not.
Yes, absolutely. Next question. Which company uh to be selected? Um, I don't know if I understand this question right. This person might wanted to say which company uh could be selected. I guess if the person is selected, how can he or she navigate to choose his own company if they have like multiple registration? I guess this what the question is.
Yeah, right. So if the person has multiple employers like entering him into the lottery pool, if selected, all of the company can petition for him. Like that's an option. They don't have to, but if the person is selected, then all the employers who are extending offer to this person can choose to file the petition.
Well, I have one more question out of this one is that what if, for example, I filed for H1B, I got selected. What if I got a new job after I get selected? Could the new company also file an H1B for me, or it should be all previous companies who filed?
That's very good question. Only those who enter the beneficiary into the registration can proceed with the filing based on the registration.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. And let's move on to the next. Hello, I work for company A and company B sponsors me. If I win, can I transfer that to company A for that for this year's scenario? And
Um,
they're not related companies.
well, yeah, I mean, you can, but it just I'm just curious, if you are working for company A, why don't you just ask company A to, kind of register you, right? Then they can move forward with
Yeah.
the filing. It seems to be more natural. Of course, change of employer is allowed, but when you're working for a company, yet having another company sponsors you, I think it can get a little tricky. That's kind of like the thing USCIS is going after right now for at least those registrants in previous years. They want to detect if there's any fraud there. So I'm not saying, this is a fraud, but it does seems to be a little unusual, and you might want to look into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do have like a further personal questions, feel free to scan our QR code so we can connect you with our attorney Meng and you can do consultation with her to ask more in-depth questions as well. And moving on to the next question, is there a way to check if the employer has actually applied for H1B lottery?
Unfortunately, I don't think from an employee's perspective, you can really check it in any public resource because this is in the employer's private online account. If they want, they can share a screenshot with you, but they are not obligated to.
Yes, and we should, keep our hopes up as well. Maybe there's another change that, finally you are able to see the information, but we'll see about that. Next question, I will get a master degree in May. So can I use the master's quota for this year?
Yes. So you only need to have the degree by the time of filing. So if you can get the master's degree in May and um, the filing is made after you get that degree, then that is okay. You can enter
Absolutely.
into the master cap in March.
Thank you. And next question, if I get selected for H1B lottery, my stand OPT expired on end of May. What could be the work authorization status until the October 1st? Do I need to consider change any status or anything?
Right, that is kind of the scenario where you really need to work closely with your employer and the council to have the H1B petition filed before May the 31st. So if the case is filed before May the 31st, then your OPT is automatically extended until September the 30th. This year, it's going to be a lot easier because with the online filing, you're going to get the receipt right away, like instantly after the filing is made.
All right, that's good news. And moving on, if I get selected, is it okay to travel abroad during the filing process?
Yeah, that really depends on whether you travel before your case is approved or after your case is approved. I would assume most of the F1 students whose case gets selected would request a change of status in the US. So basically, if the H1B is approved, your status will automatically change into H1B from October the 1st. That's usually the case. So for those change of status petitions, like applications, if you leave in the middle of the adjudication, like before it is approved, then you abandon that change of status request. So your H1B petition will still be approved, but you won't be able to automatically change into the H1B status on October the 1st. You will have to leave, apply for H1B visa in order to activate your H1B status. So if you still want to preserve your right to change your status automatically on October the 1st, then you can travel after your petition is approved.
That's good
But
advice. Thank
Yeah,
you for
but
that.
make sure whenever I would say whenever you plan to leave the US, it's always a good idea to inform your immigration counsel, to check if there's anything that may be very specific to your case that you should be aware.
Absolutely. And go to the next question. Is there anything I should be aware of when I'm applying for H1B with a day one CPT current status?
Sure. So when USCIS, issues a request for evidence, the person's underlying status, like say for F1 students who are using the CPT, usually they would ask for proof of full-time student, whether you are attending school full-time. Okay, that is very important. The other is about, like how related is your job to your major? Is that something related? Recently, we have seen some USCIS officers asking for the cooperative agreement between the school and the employer. Actually, that is a requirement in the regulation, when the student is using CPT, the employer and the school should have some sort of cooperative agreement. So that is something you can probably watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Attorney Meng's point, we would recommend the students first, to start from choosing the right program that fit your job, and then you should be prepared for your evidence that you have done your homework, you have went to on-site classes, just in case that when you are filing for H1B, you get the RFE, you should be easily passing the RFE if you have those evidence. Um, to your point. And next question. If my OPT ends on April 12th, can I apply for cap gap without a decision being made, or I need to wait for the decision with premium processing? I assume the decision is the H1B approval.
Right. So cap gap will start after filing. So you don't have to wait for the approval to take advantage of the cap gap. So as long as the H1B petition is filed by April the 12th, then you will have the cap gap extension until September the 30th, unless it is withdrawn or denied earlier than that.
Yeah, I think in this case, I would just recommend this person working with your company and lawyer, a little bit on a timely census because you do have to get that H1B filed before that, your OPT have expired, which is pretty soon because you only get the result at the end of March. So you have a pretty tight schedule to work with here, but nothing to worry about really. And next question, if I get selected for H1B lottery, am I allowed to keep working using my CPT with F1 without activating H1B?
You can choose to not request like change of status, but you probably want to inform the council because when the immigration council is preparing the H1B petition, uh, if the person is currently in the US, most of the time it's pretty much like assumed that the person will request a change of status. So if you choose not to on purpose, you can let the council know so they can check the box that you request consular process instead of the change of status. Then your status will remain F1 until you activate the H1B by applying for the H1B visa.
Absolutely. Next question, would LCA certification be impacted by layoffs?
Not right now. Nope, not right now.
Okay, good to know. Next question, how about, if someone's passport is expiring, I think we kind of answered this before, you know, if if the person get the passport renewed after March 22, um, what would that happen?
Yeah, that is a good question. Right now, it's required that you should have a valid passport at the time of registration. Again, we don't know if the system would allow us to put like an expired date for the travel document or the passport. We will have to see if the system would allow us to do that.
Okay, next question is a very great question. So this person wanted to ask, are the chances, I assume the H1B odds, lower if I apply with a staffing agency?
Well, to the lottery, definitely not. Okay, so the lottery is just purely random. So it won't really consider any case-specific facts. As to the adjudication on the petition, I would say it really depends because when you're working with a staffing agency, you would have to show there's employer-employee relationship. So that would usually be a little bit more challenging than in the traditional like kind of like employee kind of relationship at a regular company. But I would say this is not something that cannot be solved. So if you work with an agency that does send people to like client like end client site, it really depends on what kind of structure they have. So that's kind of very case specific.
Yes. Next question. This person is also, applying through a vendor or a agency, and the contract are ending this year. If he gets selected or she, does the person only get H1B until December this year, or can the person file for a new employee?
Hmm. Uh, I I assume this is about like those third-party placement kind of arrangement. Yes. So usually you need to provide the contract, like the petitioner needs to provide a contract showing like how much work is available and what is the end date. I believe this is also something proposed in the new rule that could have some change later this year. But right now, yes, that really depends on what is the contract end date. That is something USCIS factors in.
Yes. And next question, I think I asked about this previously, and we just wanted to make sure that again, if I am selected per this year's rule, can I change employer before filing the H1B and then file for the new employer?
No. So right now, after selection, you need to proceed with the employer, like whose name is in the registration selection notice.
Absolutely. Um, Next question, I'm working on STEM OPT, and even though the F1 visa stamp has expired, my passport is not. Would that be an issue on identity verification?
Not at all. So that's all about the passport. You don't have to have a valid visa because valid visa is only required at the time of entry. After your entry, it's really only your I-94 or other status document that governs like your valid status in the US. Only valid passport is required.
Yes. And next question, we have discussed this in the presentation, so I would really recommend you to check out our replays from the emails that you got after this webinar. But he wanted to ask, or she wanted to ask, do you have any estimation about the odds of this year's lottery?
Yeah, based on our count from past year's data, I would say it's probably somewhere between 20 to 25. Or if we're more optimistic, like it may be somewhere between 20 to 30. But again, that's very subjective. That's on the presumption that this year's beneficiary number is at about the same level as last year's.
Yes, and do keep in mind that if you have a master's degree in the US, you're able to enter the master cap, which give you a slightly more advantage that you have a slight better shot to get selected in that case. And next question, what about if you have work from home, then USCIS decided to do a company site visit?
Mhm. Okay, so if you work from home, that should be disclosed in the LCA and in the petition. So your home office should also be listed as one of the work sites. We actually have seen USCIS going to people's home for site visit during COVID. So that is also possible.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Next question. My H1B transfer to a new employer got flagged and got RFE'd, and my employer is still working on the responses to my RFE. Can I still register in the lottery for this fiscal year before RFE for H1B transfer clears?
Yeah, sure, you can. While your last year's H1B is still under adjudication or being appealed, you can have new H1B registration this year.
Yes, and for next question, because we have previously answered this one about day one CPT to H1B, what to note and what to pay attention to. So I would highly recommend you to check out our YouTube replays to watch the whole thing so you could have a better picture of how to apply for H1B and what to pay attention to. So we wouldn't answer this one at the moment. And let's jump into the next question. How long would it take if my company is new in applying for H1B, with a system from a lawyer? Could the employee pay the fees, if the employer don't want it to, spend this money?
I can answer the second question first. The answer is no. The fee has to be paid by the employer. It's a violation if the employer let the employee to pay for the fee. The only fee that can be paid by the employee is the premium processing fee. Um, as to how long it will take, well, the filing window and the registration window will be the same for everybody. So even that is a company new to to the H1B, they should still finish everything by the end of the filing or the registration window. So it will be good idea to ask the company to maybe start earlier and start at least to work with a counsel who's familiar with the process so that they can be more prepared to do everything right.
Absolutely. And for the time's sake, we will go ahead and answer one last question for everybody. I'm sorry that we couldn't do all the questions. You guys are very excited. You guys asked a lot of questions. Those are great. And we wanted to do another webinar with Attorney Meng by the end of March. So hopefully everybody, could get selected. If you wanted to learn more about H1B, you can come back and check our webinars in the upcoming future. So for the next question, how long will it take if my company is, oh, I think I answered this. And, can a person change jobs after failing? But,
Mhm.
before the H1B kicks in, I think we also kind of answered this. Do you want to have your final take on this?
Sure. I know this question is also asked a lot every year. I would say first of all, even that can be done in some cases. There's one condition. That is the first employer doesn't withdraw that petition before the end of September, so before October the 1st. So that is the one condition. And if that condition can be met, then yes, sometimes that can be done. But it really depends on how the new company, the new employers council interprets it. Because I know like among the immigration lawyer community, some practitioners have different opinion about changing the employer before the start date. So they may not work on the filing until the H1B status has already taken effect. But just practically speaking, sometimes that can be done. But at least there's one condition: the first employer cannot withdraw.
All right. Thank you so much for your one last question answer. And I want to say thank you again for, another wonderful webinar with us, Attorney Meng, and we are expecting wonderful, amazing webinars in the future with our students. And I want to thank everybody for attending our webinar, and hopefully I can see you very soon. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone. Good luck
Thanks,
to
Attorney
everyone.
Meng. Thanks, everybody. Good luck for the H1B lottery. All right. Bye, everybody.